Hi everyone, this is Kyle Thompson once again, and of course I'm running to become your next mayor in the Belleville municipal elections this October. You can view more information on my webpage at voteforkyle.ca or visit us on our social media pages. First off, I want to apologize as I may spin through this at a quick pace and likely I'm going to bumble it up a bit as it's a rather long video to kick things off. However, I think it's important that the public in our community is aware of a few things that likely will be unsettling to some and to many others it's simply old news. Before this, I want to remind individuals that yes, I have a very positive outlook for our community, despite the projected or worrisome outlook for the near future. I believe that communities that work collectively and collaboratively will more than thrive. I have talked about freezing, if not reducing property tax for 4 years and reducing this by 20% for seniors and devising plans for senior renters to reduce the burden for all during these times of high inflation and taxation. And of course, I have much more to say about essential services in the case of nurses and doctors, along with the other services, of course. I would like to talk about homelessness situations and much more as we move through these campaigns. Yes, I am the late add to the race, and therefore I'm a little behind the other two candidates. However, that really may be questionable considering that all I've seen from them or council looking for re-election is cake cutting and spirited waving, which I'm not sure what to make of, but then again, I never ran for a municipal position, and maybe this inexperience is a godsend because of so. Of course, this is also why, and likely why, we are going to see a fresher new group filling a lot of positions in City Hall this fall, and something I think everyone's excited about. I did make a quick written statement earlier, which got some great attention, and I want to thank all that called me directly or popped into my business or DM me personally about this. It's great to know that so many understand where we are today, good or bad, and that they are excited to take on the coming challenges. To view this original written statement, of course, visit our website or social media pages where we talk about the awkwardness and other things that seem to plague our community currently. So this would be a great time to break down that opening written statement and a few parts which drew attention, or maybe it is best to just illustrate where it was leading. And this is where the integrity matters and house cleaning portion of our campaign comes into play. This may be blunt, but also likely needs to be, so keep an open mind. I do get asked why I am so open when talking about such things that have happened over the past 2+ years and the things that continue today. Of course, these conversations can be met, as everyone's seen, with anger and are seemingly taboo for many in society, which I'm sure we all can relate to some extent. But for me, I'm not afraid to discuss actual data that has been released by video or legitimate documentations from our government or what we want to believe to be our reliable institutions. I do find it odd and concerning that most of the statements I and many want to discuss are released during obscure times, if on TV or social. And it's if in document form, they tend to be buried deeply within the document, only for them to literally contradict these statements and documents later that night. So for me, not to feel awkward or nervous about these topics, and many others not to feel awkward about these topics, is based on the fact that I and the many of you are okay if incorrect, because it's their statements and it's their info. So if there's another way to perceive this info, then I wish they would explain this. The fact is that it boils down to constructive and open discussions, which our government and of course our municipalities refuse to have. Ideally, I and everyone else would prefer these to be public discussions and between legitimate professionals with differing opinions, looking to illustrate and show the public what is truly on the up and up. We all understand that the truth is the truth, and I believe we all can accept this even if it's differing from our original opinions or beliefs, whatever the outcome. Over 70% of Canadians, many figure now, have openly expressed or shown in some form or another that they have a healthy skepticism to at least some part of what has or is going on at this moment, And it's not just about the pandemic itself or the conversation around treatments, but more so it's about the lasting and aftermath effects and devastation of the lockdowns that we all now are suffering through. Silence and avoidance gets us nowhere, and this sentiment we all should agree on. So many of you have seen the concerning news coming out on, or tidbits of it, on what we all once classified as a valued source of Canadian news media. Of course, these are now recognized by their own omission as the media that only 35% or even less now trust. This, of course, falls right in line with Canadians' trust in government as well, which, yes, would include even our municipal governments. The knowledge that lockdowns, restrictions, and the measures we took not only were known to be more harmful, but just how harmful and disruptive was known and documented long before they occurred. And yes, even the projected decades of death, poverty, and the collapse of our institutions and our children's futures were clearly outlined, not only for our government, but yes, you guessed it, it was available for our mayor and our council as well, and even provided to them by many concerned citizens. You're right, this is concerning and disappointing, and it was dismissed and ignored by them. Some may want to say, but what if? And don't get me wrong, I can understand this and recognize where the legitimacy of fear comes from, and believe you me, many others do as well. But if you knew the evidence and the studies surrounding lockdowns were shared with your government and your municipalities, then you would agree that the other what if of lockdowns was far more dangerous, crippling, and future killing than any virus available. And we are seeing this take fold now as the suffering continues to build momentum. Whether you are the current mayor or the past MP who ran in the area, or current council members, you all have something in common. Ultimately, you may not be bad people. However, you made horrifically bad decisions on the part of others when you decide to keep silent about this info and simply follow the rule or order of government. The harm from this now is beyond proven and openly admitted by all members of government and media when pressed, of course. You either chose over your community what you believe to be your social standing within a small group of the community, or to protect your own position or job, or maybe something more understandable, you lacked the courage to do what was right in a honestly difficult situation and to stand up for your community. And I'm not saying a small portion or a fringe group, but recognizably after all the effects, you now know and see this is your whole community. The second option of fear or lack of something in your character at the moment when it was needed most, some might believe to be more acceptable option for some, and some might even pity your situation. But this pity is likely to wane rather quickly as the overall effects gather momentum in so many ways and touch so many lives and families in the coming weeks, months, and years. They knew, and yes, your council and mayor and even the other former MP decided to sit silent when a simple voice of concern or call for rational conversation could have assisted so many, and certainly this can be seen in both case scenarios. So why was this not an option? Now, not wanting to vilify anyone more than they've already done themselves, but rather to bring to light a few things, I feel it is important to mention the following and possibly leave it to you, the public, with a few questions that you may want to ask your current council and mayor over the coming days and weeks. Please note that many of these things I will be mentioning here are visible on my website, once again, and either backed by the government or either backed by government video documentation or government links, or some combo of these for those that need more details. So first off, in the last little while, Dr. Kieran Moore, of course our chief Ontario physician, has made a few confusing comments that stated facts which many presented to our government and municipalities on numerous occasions during, and I'll repeat, during all this. Yet we still see the craziness and hypocrisy of our government and municipalities continue as they force people to decide between a roof over their heads and the essential needs for their families and the treatment they are concerned or have questions about. All this when, more ironically and clearly stated, that there never were any mandates for this, and yet the punishment of people and their families were applied by many and even continue with absolutely no sympathetic or apologetic response from our councillors or mayor, not even a peep. Of course, they will say these are provincial or federal government rules, and because of so, this apparently allows them to avoid any morally right or ethical response to such things that our public may wish to have had a responsive action to. To this, your public, your community says, stop the nonsense and hire these good people back, and encourage others in our community to do the same. Why? Because it's the human and right thing to do. Stop claiming ignorance to the existence of this info, and stop pushing or plugging mandates or products on people and their kids when you clearly know and understand the possible ramifications for some, and more importantly, that the products just don't do what they're supposed to do, and every day do more things we don't want them to do. In another case, Moore came out and said informed consent is now needed to be applied with treatment, leading many to ask, then what kind of consent was it before? In the same statement, he concluded that 1 in 5,000 young healthy adults that received a single treatment may experience things such as myocarditis or other things, and this has led to many saying that if I or my loved ones, or asking if I or my loved ones receive 2, 3, or 4, what does this mean for those? What does this mean? And what does this mean for those not so healthy? Of course, these are questions best left unexplained, though, and shown at 10 a.m. in the morning when no one is watching. Instead of our mayor leaving the difficult choice up to our public, or stating that due to confusion and hypocrisy of our government and those speaking on its behalf of this, that he and council would be stepping back or simply stopping their own recommendations for this and telling those to make the choices best for them and their families, which would be the easiest approach. He instead does a weekly update and peddles this with no regard, and this I can't understand. On a second note, I will mention to keep an open mind. Remember, this is legally documented and available. I will ask if you, the public, could see this causing concern or confusion or even hysteria to a certain extent, and ask if you believe that the public and the families should have been privy to this information and entitled to a full explanation of such things. Once again, I'm not saying this is this or that, only asking if you would agree that your public officials had an obligation to address this and even allow for open discussion, as our government was unwilling to do so. So even stranger than the publicized info we just mentioned, even our own local health head at the time, Peter Oglaza, was forced to admit through a Freedom of Information request that there was never ever a gold standard purified isolation for any of for the virus or any of the various variants. Yet we still hear them talk about this as if it exists, and frankly, it may. However, when you are unwilling to refute your own information and publicize data, well, things become worrisome, to say the least. And it is more than understandable that people would have legitimate questions and concerns. This info has been, or has had me puzzled beyond belief, because the implications to this are shocking. All, and I mean all, questions you would have after this would take on totally different meanings, or really couldn't even be asked anymore. But it was not just Peter Oglaza, it also was every other health head in every Ontario region, and furthermore every provincial and Canadian health board, which did not have this information as well, and in some cases flat out explained this did not exist. If you take this even further, it was also the NIH and CDC that could not confirm this either, and in fact, on numerous occasions, the now recently gutted CDC on their own site has had to state this as well, as it relates to, get this, the ineffectiveness to the testing that does not work because of the lack of existence of such a sample. Yet we still continue down this road and still not one councillor or mayor will express the concern in this, as many suffer, and instead we get nothing but avoidance. Let me ask you, the public, is this okay? Is this okay that our councillors and mayors were provided information from the government sources from numerous individuals, not to even conduct some sort of questioning or not to have some sort of public forum to discover what is up, before obviously imposing the harmful things they did on our public? And do you believe that a pitiful answer of the government made me do it is acceptable? Because that to me is just screams the equivalency of saying Aussie made me do it. They knew that these lockdown measures would not, or they knew these lockdown measures would do, they knew what these lockdown measures would do, and they still did it to you, to us, to our families and our neighbors. So is it okay that your representatives say this is a government issue and pass the buck and trade in their integrity and any sense of moral fiber that they had? It does not matter what your thoughts are on other things, just this. And it would, if you would consider that what they did was an acceptable response, considering this info was available before we took these measures, and now that they are publicly admitted to be true. Do you, the public, condone the non-responsiveness to this by our mayor and council? I'm certain the answer is no. Yet we are still awkwardly sitting silent and causing harm unwittingly, but I don't think unknowingly anymore at this point. So let's be okay with the conversations, and even better with the discussions, which will enable us to get back to a suitable norm. As for the current mayor and the past Liberal MP and even the current council, I would think many at least want to hear a rational explanation and heartfelt apology to all this and your inactions. It's the least you could do and the right thing to do. As I said, in the end, you may not be bad people, and I'm sure many of you have a soul and families too. However, you made some seriously damning decisions not to help those within your community, and this is not insignificant, as many will never be able to forgive or recoup what has been lost or what is being lost at the moment. I will have one more brief discussion on this topic to finalize this so-called house cleaning portion of the campaign. And then I'll be diving into my thoughts on the homelessness, healthcare, service departments, and other standard tasks. And my most important topic is, of course, finding ways to improve the betterment of and creating a higher standard of living for all within our community during these times that potentially don't look that optimistic for any Canadian. Till next time, know things can improve, and they will improve, and just how much truly is up to you. Thank you for your valued time, and I look forward to saying more in the near future.